Welcome to LawWorks, your local monthly law magazine show with legal information and news that you can use. I'm attorney Mike Weber.
And I'm attorney Daryl Crosswaite. On today's show, on the Law News docket, Mike and our special guest Kip Guinan, a local attorney, will discuss the current heroin epidemic and 9 new pieces of legislation which have been proposed in the state of Ohio designed to help the heroin situation.
Our special guest, attorney Kip Guinan, will tell us about the Hamilton County courts and what they're doing with the heroin epidemic.
And on our FAQ docket, frequently asked questions, we will ask our special guest Kip Guinan some questions regarding the drug-related offenses presented in the Hamilton County area.
On our What Should You Do docket, Daryl and I will give some insight into dealing with this type of a situation and what resources are available if a family member is involved with heroin. Welcome to the Law News docket, the part of the show where we review law-related stories in the news and how they affect us. The recent heroin epidemic has hit the greater Cincinnati area as hard as the rest of the nation. The state of Ohio has drafted 9 new bills aimed at curbing the heroin and opiate problem in Ohio.
According to the latest Ohio Department of Health data, heroin overdose deaths were up by 60% in 2012 over 2011. And in 2012, heroin drove the overall number of fatal unintentional drug overdose deaths to 1,914.
On average, about 5 people in Ohio die every day due to opiate overdose. This includes heroin, OxyContin, Percocet, Vicodin, other opiates. It is for this reason we want to address some of the bills that are currently pending and what solutions may be out there.
We won't be discussing each of the proposed laws in detail, but we have included summaries of those proposed laws on our Facebook site, Cincinnati LawWorks.
Joining us today is our special guest, Cincinnati criminal defense attorney Kip Guinan, who we will interview a little bit later in the show. There are currently 9 bills that are pending in the Ohio legislature that are trying to come up with solutions to the heroin epidemic that is rampant throughout Ohio. And there are different ones that put responsibility on the physicians to closely monitor their patients. There are ones that require that any medication that's prescribed to a minor that's an opiate has to have their parents' consent and signature. Kip, my thought is that public awareness is one of the potential solutions for drug abuse. And as far as that bill where the parents have to be aware that their kids are being prescribed medication, what's your thought on a bill like that?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of these bills, in my opinion, are trying to capture the horse after it's already left the barn. As a criminal defense attorney here in the tri-state area, opiate addiction, crimes related to opiate addiction are simply on a rampage. I would say a rough estimate of 45 to 50% of cases that I'm involved with on a daily basis have some connection to heroin, OxyContin, other opioid addictions, be it through prescription abuse or simply off-the-street narcotics. I fear that some of these bills, as I said, are a little bit too little too late. If a teen or even a child is going to be prescribed some type of opiate, obviously, I would hope the medical professionals would have the parent's consent, and not only their consent, but also inform the parent of, hey, your child has this particular ailment or is in this particular pain. I'm going to prescribe OxyContin. I'm going to prescribe hydrocodone. Here's the risks. Here is the effects. And more importantly, here is the length of the prescription and the dosage. I think that's a major factor that I don't see addressed in any of these proposed bills is the dosage amounts. Some of the bills I think are strong, some of them are weak. For example, one of the new proposed bills is that it become a requirement to teach opiate addiction through health courses at people's particular schools. While I think drug abuse and drug addiction are important aspects to discuss in the educational system, I just think that it'd be a much stronger position coming from a parent, coming from a medical provider. My personal experience at the time I was coming up through middle school, high school, obviously the discussion was marijuana, cocaine, and I think for today's legislatures and today's public, the medications, and be they street drugs or prescription drugs, are so much more powerful, so much more addictive, that I just don't think school is the place that will adequately address the true dangers that lie for anybody that falls into abusing these type of substances.
In your experience, the minors that are exposed to and have the opportunity to use opiates, what percentage actually get those through a prescription versus steal them from, you know, their parents, medicine cabinets, that sort of thing?
You know, I would say a lot of my clients that I've had contact with, be it juvenile or adult, and this again goes to the fact that this type of epidemic ranges from any socioeconomic scale. I've seen the very poor all the way up to wealthy college-age students, as well as work professionals. One example that springs to mind is I represented a businessman who had a serious car accident, had some back injuries, needed surgery. The doctor put him on OxyContin for post-surgical care. When his prescription ran out, his addiction did not. And he turned to going downtown, quite frankly, and bought heroin to help him with his physical pain. He became an addict and lost everything. Was divorced within 3 years, lost his family, lost his job, and was facing drug trafficking and drug possession charges by the time I met him.
Kip, let me ask you a question. One of these, I was looking at the kind of a summary of the 9 proposed bills, and one of them requires a consumer fact sheet to educate the people that are taking these medications. Isn't that kind of a ridiculous requirement, since every prescription that you get at a pharmacy already contains some type of a fact sheet? I mean, what is behind that, if you can kind of shed some light?
If you're asking me, I think it's to cover their liability. By that I mean, think about any time you get a prescription for yourself or someone in your family. Do you really read that information?
Absolutely not.
You do the dosage your doctor tells you. If there's any serious side effects, the doctor may consult you with that. But when is the last time you saw anybody in line at the pharmacy saying, hey, to the pharmacist, can you give me some more information about this drug? I just think that that's way too weak a proposal, way too weak. Sometimes I find the legislature and our government are trying to take measures that just won't help the problem that goes on here on a daily basis.
It almost seems as though there's some knee-jerk reactions in the legislature to come up with whatever idea seems vaguely appropriate at the time.
I would agree with that. That way they go back to their constituents and they say, look how tough I am on these type of crimes. Look how tough I am on these type of addictions and policies.
In your experience, Kip, is there a certain area of the medical profession where you see more patients or more of your clients that they're getting the opioids, you know, the medications, abusing them more so than, let's say, a general practitioner?
Two components of that. Yes, chiropractic care is one of the most serious I see for prescription shopping, and general medical care. Quite a few clients I have it down to a profession where they will know which doctors will cross-check prescriptions, which pharmacies they can go to, which will not cross-check prescriptions, and that's where I think the real serious legislature intent needs to be put. One of the bills proposed makes it a requirement that doctors keep accurate counts of these type of prescriptions, how many pills they have on site. It's called doctor farming and prescription farming, and the people that are really addicted not only to the substances, but are also trafficking in these types of substances, know exactly what they're doing. It's big money for them.
You know, Mike and I both handle workers' comp and Social Security cases, and in the records you see references to the OR system. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the pain management doctors that we deal with are pretty good about checking that OR system. Is that something that needs to be done on a more consistent basis by medical professionals?
Yes, I would agree with 100%, especially at your larger hospitals where you're having post-surgical prescriptions written. I think there should be, from my perspective, much more accurate counting for each and every pill that leaves that pharmacy inside these larger hospitals.
We will be back in a moment.
Welcome back. This is our guest docket where Mike and I will now be interviewing our guest, Kip Guinan. Kip, first of all, why did you choose the criminal area of the practice of law as one of your specialties?
Well, I focus on criminal law. When I passed the bar exam in 1996, I decided I could do this law thing myself, so I hung up my own shingle. And the place to get your feet wet in the litigation field is criminal law. The dockets are plentiful. The indigent clients are plentiful. So from 96 to 98, I represented a lot of indigent clients in municipal and common pleas courts for felonies and misdemeanors. Then in 1998, I got the opportunity to join the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office, and that was a great experience. I worked in various departments, ranging from juvenile court all the way up to white-collar crimes. I also got into common pleas litigation, prosecuting murders, rapes, serious felonies here in Hamilton County. Unfortunately, it didn't pay all that great, so I left that practice when we were having our third child in 1998, and I've been doing 2008, and I've been doing criminal defense ever since.
So you've been both sides of the practice now, on the defense attorney and also on the prosecutor side. So that kind of helps you, I would expect, in the long run when you represent someone in a criminal matter.
Yeah, I've got experience, as you said, on both sides, and not only knowing the strategies from both a prosecutor's perspective and a defendant's perspective, but I also know the police officers involved, and I know the prosecutors that I've worked alongside, or I help show them the ropes a little bit, and I think that's important in building a strong relationship interpersonally as well in the criminal justice system. Okay.
You know, Kip, every single media story that you see these days terms the opiate problem as an epidemic. Do you think the media is overstating the current problems?
You know, I believe they overstate the weather in this town much more than they do the opiate problem. As I said earlier, I would say at least 50% of my cases have some relation to this type of problem. It goes across any socioeconomic pattern here in our society. It hits the rich, it hits the poor, it hits the educated, the non-educated. I've represented college students who thought it would be fun to try a little bit of heroin. They both overdosed and were actually brought back to life by paramedics, but then they were charged with felony possession charges, and now you have two college students who have felony possessions on their record.
So you're saying you not only see the possession or the trafficking, but you see a relationship to other charges?
Oh, certainly. Thefts, robberies. I know one of the stories the media covered a couple months ago was the letter that President Ono from University of Cincinnati sent to the Hamilton County Courthouse to the judges. Clifton area is ripe for drug abuse, and that goes hand in hand with the robberies you read about. You can't turn on the TV these days without seeing some type of robbery, some type of shooting, and I think you can draw a direct correlation to substance abuse issues. Either people trying to get money to get their fix, if you will, drug dealers fighting for turf so they can peddle these substances, and people just struggling to live on a daily basis.
So it's kind of a snowball effect on not only the legal system, but the healthcare system, the Social Security system, the welfare system. I would assume that all of those are going to start seeing more and more people seeking services or benefits from those agencies because of the heroin epidemic.
That's a great point, Darrell. I mean, not only do you have the court system involved, I've had situations where a parent will bring a young child to court with them. They have no daycare provider. They can't afford to put the child in any type of daycare. So they bring the child to court. So then it becomes the court's issue. Well, what do I do with this young child when I'm putting this person either into inpatient treatment or, unfortunately, sometimes they do go to the Justice Center or to the Ohio Penitentiary. I've seen those situations. What they do is they call 241 Kids, so that gets that Jobs and Family Services involved. That gets foster care involved. If a family member can be found, they'll be placed with a grandparent, but that has to go through what's called a safety plan, which then gets the juvenile court involved. So one person's addiction can actually have a snowball effect, as you said, leading to affecting everybody else in their family. Grandparents are affected, brothers and sisters are affected, nephews, nieces, anybody who has association with this person is going to have to pick up and help that person out.
So it's fair to say that the court involvement, of course, is funded by taxpayer money. By taxpayer money, also.
Sure, and that's you see the Justice Center overcrowding again, and I think Representative Seitz and House Bill 86, I believe it was, passed a couple of years ago, where we're making low-end possessions, F4s, felony 4s, and felonies of the fifth degree possession cases are now presumed for community control, which is a fancy way of saying probation. Now, those people can be sent to the penitentiary if, for example, they have a lengthy record, if the judge feels that they are not amenable to probation. But there is some cause and effect of the jail overcrowding, the prison overcrowding, and people being quite fed up of, hey, locking these people up is not helping anything because when they come out, they still have the addiction. And you don't want to have to keep paying to house these people. Why not get them some help and try to fix the problem if you can fix it?
Is the rise in the heroin problem related to the recent crackdown or in recent years on doctors, prescribing prescription pills? I know they've made a concerted effort to try to, DEA will go into a doctor's office and try to shut down a doctor's office because they're over-prescribing.
Right.
Is it becoming more difficult to get those prescription pills? And is that what is leading to the increase in heroin-related addictions and death?
I'm not sure if there's a direct correlation or not. I think that may lead to more people becoming addicted to these opioids and other substances. Unfortunately, for the people who are addicted, the heroin is so cheap. And right now, it's so plentiful. Why would you go into Kroger and run a prescription through when your prescription may have run out? You don't want to be a record as far as your insurance carrier of what type of prescriptions you're buying. And heroin is an opioid, and you're going to get the same effect, and it's going to be much cheaper. And the addict's not thinking about the dangers. The addict is not thinking about, I think you might have seen in Butler County, people were dying. They were mixing it with fentanyl and other heavy depressive, mood-altering substances were found in the heroin. And God forbid if you get pure heroin, because that'll also kill you. As I said earlier, you can't watch the news without seeing some type of event about a shooting or a robbery. Well, it's also unfortunate. I think it's just about an everyday occurrence. You pick up a paper or get online or check our local media, and there's always a report of someone overdosing. And I don't think I can go with simply the easy fix of, hey, it's the prescription pills problem. Let's address it through, as you said, through the pill reporting with the hospitals and medical providers. I think in order to be effective, we've just got to be able to find some way to treat the addict on the street level, be it fighting tougher rules as far as trafficking in drugs, maybe better treatment options, but again, who pays for all of that?
Do you think there's a particular socioeconomic group that is more susceptible to heroin abuse?
No, I really don't. I think this drug is so powerful, and I think it's so rampant right now. It's on college campuses, it's on high school campuses, and God forbid, I also think it's on middle school campuses, and who's to say where it's going to stop spreading? It's in the cities, it's in small towns. I've had represented clients in Claremont County that got hooked at a party. You hope that person doesn't make the choice because these things are so addictive. It only takes one hit, if you will, and you can be hooked.
So with that said, Kip, is it then you try to educate our children at middle school, elementary school about heroin and what it can do to you?
I would hope, as I said earlier, the family would be more involved rather than our educators. Because at school, I just don't think that the message is coming in strong enough.
Great. Kip, thank you very much. You've provided some phenomenal information here that I think everyone can use. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Up right now is our FAQ docket, frequently asked questions, and today's topic is criminal law and drug offenses. Our special guest, Kip Guinan, is going to discuss criminal law.
Thanks, Mike. A lot of times I'm asked by people when they find that I'm involved in criminal defense, what will happen to me if I get arrested for drug possession? The answer can run a myriad of possibilities. If this is a first-time offense, the officer may cite the person to court, which means that you're given a court date, served a copy of the complaint and the affidavit. The officer may also take you down to the Hamilton County Justice Center or to whatever local jail that you might find yourself in, be it in Claremont County or Butler County. Usually you're held for a time while you're processed into the Justice Center. The pretrial services will then contact what they call the presiding judge to set what's called a bond. A bond is a promise or a payment of money to ensure that you come back to court and don't miss any of your court dates. If this is a first-time drug possession case, pretrial services at Hamilton County Sheriff's Department will see if you're appropriate for what's called the drug court. The drug court is an important tool that we have in Hamilton County, and it's actually growing. Other counties are considering opening their own drug courts. Here locally in Hamilton County, the drug court is run or presided over by Judge Kimberly Burke. The goal of drug court, rather than to punish the offender, is to try to get that person rehabilitated, get them help. The person is screened. It's a purely voluntary enrollment in drug court. And by that I mean if the person says, listen, I'm not interested in drug treatment, I don't have a problem, I want to contest these charges, they're simply removed from drug court and placed onto a regular docket following an indictment. If, however, the person admits that the substance they found was theirs, they don't want to contest the possession charge, and most importantly, they realize that they want to get help, drug court will help them do that. The drug court works hand in hand with Talbert House and what's called the ADAP program. The process for drug court is the person is put into custody for a 2-week evaluation period. During that 2-week period, they may be detoxing from whatever substances they're addicted to, but most importantly, they're interviewed by social services as well as people from the ADAP program. After those 2 weeks, the person is brought back before Judge Burke and a recommendation is made. That recommendation can be one of two things. Either they're an appropriate candidate for the inpatient ADAP program, which is a 90-day inpatient intensive program. And that's really where most of the recommendations are leaning towards these days. With the opioid addiction we've talked about here during this broadcast, as well as the addiction to pain pills and things of that nature, a lot of people realize that they just need more help than they have as far as willpower. These type of substances are such strength that simply cutting cold turkey can have physiological as well as psychological ramifications for the person who's trying to quit. And that's some of the counseling that they get through ADAPT. The most important aspect of drug court is the ADAPT program as well as what they call aftercare. If the person makes it through ADAPT, they're assigned a probation officer, they're urine screened, they're encouraged to find employment, given some leads to find potential employment, and they actually have a graduation ceremony. Judge Burke does an excellent job of following along with the person or the client's progress through the program, and if they make it through the program, they actually have a graduation ceremony where Judge Burke personally attends, congratulates the person for all their hard work, and wishes them all the best in the future, because it's ongoing. And even after they graduate, they have aftercare components to it, and most importantly, the case does not show up as a conviction on their record. So if you're someone in your late teens or early 20s, and you have an addiction problem, and you're trying to find employment, obviously you don't want a felony drug conviction on your record. That's the most important aspect to drug court. A lot of people also ask me, well, what happens if police never read me my rights? And I think everybody has that understanding of what the Miranda warnings are. Since the 1960s, I think every crime TV show and or movie has these Miranda warnings put in them. Contrary to popular opinion, if an officer is not reading Miranda rights, it does not mean the person's criminal charges are dismissed. Rather, any statements the defendant makes after a custodial interrogation has begun, wherein those rights are not read, may be what they call suppressed. The charge is not outright dismissed, but rather any statements the defendant makes may be suppressed by the court and may not be used by the state in what we call their case in chief.
Kip, thank you very much. I appreciate the information. You provided some phenomenal information with regard to the drug court and the Hamilton County process for criminal cases. Now for our last docket, the what should you do?
Up now is the What Should You Do docket. Daryl and I are going to give you some resources for dealing with addiction and the challenges that come with this. We would like to start with the National Institute on Drug Abuse. As we were doing our research for the show, we found that this federal program and their website is a great source of information. It's drugabuse.gov.
The NIDA's mission is to lead the nation in bringing the power of science to bear on drug abuse and addiction. The site is divided into many pages. For instance, researchers. Now, researchers, that section talks about funding opportunities for individuals, organizations that want to apply for grants and contract opportunities. You also have on that section funding frequently asked questions. That section will answer all of your questions about the grant application process. Medical and health professions. That includes resources for your practice and continuing education and training. Patients and families. Again, that section of the website addresses treatment resources, and as we've discussed here today, treatment is a huge, huge issue, especially for the addicts. Putting them in jail, putting them in prison necessarily doesn't cure the problem. They need treatment resources, and this section really addresses that very well. It also has video and downloads that everyone can use with regard to treatment resources. Parents and educators. Again, there are free resources with this section for parents and educators, videos and other downloads that parents and teachers can use to kind of educate their children. And as Kip spoke earlier, he believes that from his experience being a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney, the parents need to be more involved with the education about drug addiction and heroin. And finally, also student and young adults, there are facts and information through videos and other sources. Now, each page contains resources for each group, including videos and downloadable information.
You know, in addition to the specific pages, the site features a toolbar, which is accessible from each page. And the toolbar includes a number of different things, first of which is it lists drugs of abuse. And, you know, it's not just the heroin, it's other versions of opiates, and then there's many other drugs that are out there that have the potential for abuse, and people are abusing them. The comprehensive list gives a lot of information for each of those. You know, there's related topics about prevention and treatment. One of the best, I think, is publications. There's a series of ebooks and publications listed by the drugs that are available, and you can get a lot of information if you're dealing with someone or if you yourself have a problem. There's funding, that's more for the doctors. There's news and events. The blog gives good, up-to-date information about what's happening within the NIDA. So we're going to have this link posted to our Facebook page and hope that you have the opportunity to visit this for a lot of very valuable information.
And there's one more site that I would direct everyone to look at, whether you have a situation where someone is addicted to heroin or not. I think it's good to look at. It provides some information. It's www.heroin.net. I looked at the site today before the show, and I was amazed at the amount of information that is on that particular site, and it describes in detail things about heroin addiction, heroin detox, heroin addiction treatment, heroin rehab type programs, and also long-term heroin addict recovery. And it also lists treatment centers here in the Cincinnati area that you can contact if you or a family member or a friend have a problem with heroin addiction.
We want to thank our special guest, Cincinnati criminal defense attorney Kip Guinan, for joining us today, and we want to thank you for watching.
Thanks for joining us, and please be sure to check out our Facebook page, Cincinnati Law Works.